Hey, my name's Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. Most of us don't even have gym memberships. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man, nor do we have a ton of time to train. And we don't need it because we're achieving amazing things without it. We are Garage Gym Athletes, and these are our stories. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
What's up, man? So I'm throwing you a curveball right off the bat.
Oh, I did not see this coming.
Just to spice up the intro a little bit. Okay, very fast. If you could only drink one flavor of protein for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Chocolate.
Wow, I am not expecting that. I pegged you for a vanilla guy. You're very vanilla.
So easy, man. I think I've been consuming chocolate protein for probably like a decade or more anyway.
Yeah,
and
I actually just ran out.
So I ran out, and for anyone listening, I had Equip Prime Protein, no affiliation with the company, on auto ship from Amazon, and then they ran out, and so Amazon just was like, we canceled that for you. So I ran out of protein, but they came back in stock, so I reordered. But yeah, man, chocolate. I always try vanilla. I'm always like, you know what? Might be nice to just try a little vanilla. Never enjoy it. So how about you?
So I will actually say their vanilla is fantastic. If you get like,
I don't think I've had their vanilla though. That's a good point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, their vanilla is fantastic. If you put it with like some almond milk, it's almost like milkshakey-ish, and then you just throw in some dry peanut butter stuff, and it's just like peanut butter. Or I sometimes also put them in coffee, and it's fantastic.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to try the vanilla, man. I actually, for Prime Protein, I've never, since it's meat. For some reason, I just thought chocolate would go better with meat.
Like you're covered up meat taste with chocolate?
Yeah. But
I'm not sure what kind of protein you have before that's meat.
Well, vanilla whey protein is probably my least favorite. Like there's something about the combination of vanilla and whey that I'm just like, I do not enjoy this.
So early on, I think when I first started drinking protein, I did vanilla and I got sick of it before I even finished the tub.
Exactly.
But now this stuff is actually pretty awesome.
Well, I'm going to give it a try. Well, that's going to be everybody's fact of the week then. We're just going to bypass any of my fact of the week and go straight into updates from you, man. How's life? How's training?
Good. I think somewhat officially was discharged from PT finally. Although
you're sad about it, aren't you?
I am, because I had a lot of fun times with them. I mean, I go there and I got like 30 minutes of soft tissue work done for me, which is fantastic. Some days it really hurts though, and just learned some exercises. But yeah, I've made great enough progress to mobilize my hips, and they might bring me back to do a little bit more because I still have some decompression issues. You're
like, please take me back.
Yeah, I mean, really, it was an hour of fun because like just the people there were super enjoyable. They also have some really cool stuff that I'm probably going to use. This percussion stuff, like the gun that beats into you.
Yeah.
So they have like 15, 20-minute sessions that you can go, and they'll like use the percussion on you and like stretch you and move you around to really mobilize you. So I might start doing that, which I think I need because I just am like chronically tight in the lower body. But that's about it. Feeling good. Gonna try and train a lot this week because I'm going on vacation soon.
And you're not going to be training on vacation, or what? We've talked about this kind of before in our travel episodes, so let's hear it, Joe Courtney. What are you gonna do?
Well, we're gonna do a lot of hiking.
We got a lot of hiking. Aren't you on a cruise ship?
Yeah, but each yeah, we're gonna hike the cruise ship. We got to go up and down levels to get to the different restaurants. But each port, I mean, it's Alaska, so they're gonna have a ton of awesome hikes. There's also one that we actually looked to compare. It's just as far as the Colorado race, but 1,000 meters higher climb.
Nice.
And we're only in port for a certain amount of time, so we're going to have to like kind of rush through that to get that done. So yeah, that's actually going to be
so if you pull a hamstring on the way up, you're going to miss your ship.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that kind of pressure.
Put it on the line. Yeah.
That's great.
So we're going to do a few things like that. And then we have 2 at-sea days that I think we're just going to do some bodybuilding bro sessions, just to balance things out.
Well, that's That's one way to go about it. I mean, you could refer back to our travel episode and take some of the tips and take a band or whatever. No, it's good. I mean, I think we also discussed in that episode.
I mean, I never get to use dumbbells ever.
I have a set of dumbbells. They're okay.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I never jumped on that.
They're good. They have their purpose. But no, I think we talked about it. Mixing it up, being a human being, and not being so strict all the time is just part of life. Well, let's see. For updates for me, I just kind of want to talk about this bike race. So by the time you guys are hearing this episode, if I didn't die, I will have completed the bike race, the 100-mile bike race, because this is, unfortunately, we can't do these live podcasts. We have to record them ahead of time.
And don't worry, there's a contingency plan in place for your programming to continue. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I have this conversation with the team more than they like, is if I die, what to do? And programming is one of the most important parts to keep going. Anyway, going back to this bike race. So this weekend, I'm hitting up this 100-mile bike race. It's a little bit different than past years. Past years is like, hey, let's not train for it and survive. Let's not train for it and survive. This year, I wanted to see, not if I could be competitive or anything like that, just what happens when you actually try and train. Like, how much better can you do? So I'm just looking to PR my own personal 100-mile time. And I want to talk a little bit about the prep this week. And then next week, we'll record an episode. And I'll give a full breakdown of what happened. Because who knows, like, the bike, my bike could break and I could end up running the whole thing or whatever, that's not actually going to happen, but I would just be done. But yeah, so I want to talk about kind of prep. This was a great conversation in the Garage Gym Athlete Facebook group. We have an athlete who's hitting up a 70.3 Ironman triathlon, and it's his first. He hasn't done anything like this, and he was asking for advice. And Mark Hoffmeister, he is also in the group. He chimed in, and he's done a lot of 100-mile bike races, huge endurance athlete, a lot of triathlons, and he's a beast, to be honest. Like, he is an absolute beast, especially in the endurance. I remember the first time we posted Conditioning to the Grave, like, he just, like, crushed it, and, like, he's, like, 7 minutes faster than my time. And I was like, how is that even like, I just know how much physical work has to be done. Like, how did you do that? And he's just, like, really an endurance expert. He posted a lot of things, and this is just some good tips. So what I've been doing a week out is just I've upped my carbohydrate intake to, I'd say, moderate to higher carbohydrate diet. And the real reason here is people talk about your glycogen stores. So your body can store carbohydrates, and when they do so, it's in the form of glycogen. It's in your liver and it's in your muscles. So your body can only have so much it can store. But something that nobody really knows, and it's really impossible to measure, is where your glycogen stores are at right now. Like, sitting here right now, am I 80% full? 90? Is it always 100? But if you're on a lower carbohydrate diet, like I am a lot of the time, I'd say low to moderate carbohydrate diet, I don't actually know where my glycogen stores are. So you don't want to do the carbo load that people talk about, like the day of or the night before or something. That's not really going to help that much, because glycogen stores can take a lot of time to rebuild, and especially if you're training. Every time you train, you're like knocking that down and then bringing it back up, right? And so I'm doing that a week out. That's kind of the strategy here. More carbohydrates, making sure that, because I'm still training right now too, making sure that my glycogen stores are as full as they're going to be. But even when they're absolutely full, it's only going to take care of you for the first 1 to 2 hours of any sort of endurance event. After that, you are out of glycogen storage. Your body has to start relying on fat. But your body's not that efficient unless you are like a pro athlete who trains these things, like Zach Bitter. We had it on the Better Humanology podcast. So for me, I'm going to have to be stuffing my face with carbohydrates during and throughout. So a day out, that's a week out. A day out, what I'll be doing, it's really 2 days out. I'll be increasing my electrolytes intake. So just making sure that those are really balanced, having a lot of electrolytes, not overdoing it. I've had some athletes get a little crazy with that, like consuming way too much sodium or something, week out. Like, that's not necessary and can actually be a detriment. So don't do anything like that. And I've been on top of my water all week as well. But then I'll really start dialing in electrolytes, making sure those are good to go going into the race. And then the day of is pretty simple. I'm using a carbohydrate supplement. I'll consume a bunch of carbohydrates in the form of that supplement right before the race, about an hour before the race, maybe 30 minutes before the race. And then I will be consuming a carbohydrate supplement probably every hour, every 60 to 90 minutes throughout the race, because the race can take anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. I don't know. The first year I did it, it was like just over 8 because I was on that stupid steel-framed, ridiculous bike. And then the second year I was on a better bike, but still wasn't like clipped in or anything and still hadn't practiced at all. And I think I knocked it down to like 7. And so this year I'm hoping to go 6 or below. And so it's just a lot of carbohydrates you have to be taking during that entire time period. And then that's about it. I also don't want to, actual day of strategies, I'm trying not to take any breaks unless I've gone 20 miles or more warrants a break. Because they're like, if you do this race or one of them, this race specifically, I've never done any other race, there's a lot of rest stops. Like, yeah,
there was like one every 5 miles or so.
Yeah, they're very frequent in the beginning, and then the back half, starting about 50, 60 miles, they get very infrequent. I wish it was the opposite way around.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot on the back end of the race, and so I'm just going to skip a bunch of checkpoints. At first, the first year I did, I felt like I was supposed to stop at all of them. I was like not even that tired, and I'm like, well, I guess everyone else is stopping, so I'll stop here. And I didn't really need to. So this time I'm going to try to go at least 20 miles, if not further, before stopping. So that's my strategy. For anyone fueling up you probably don't have to be this crazy if you're doing if you're doing like a Spartan Beast, it's probably the same time frame and everything, like, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. I don't know how, it depends on which beast you're running. But just some things to keep in mind. Like I don't really drink alcohol that much at all anymore anyway, but I have not touched alcohol for a long time, and I would never even think about it probably within 10 days of a race, and absolutely no food outside of good stuff like meat, vegetables. I'm eating a lot of rice this week, which is not normal for me, but I've been eating a lot of rice for the last 2 weeks, just going back to the carbohydrate thing. So that's it. That's my race prep. Hopefully there's some nugget in there that could help you guys if you're looking to do a longer event and want to know how to prep for it a little bit more.
Yeah, starting your prep a week or more out versus like 2 days.
Dude,
nutritional prep.
Every race I've done, so this is probably the most like dedicated I've been to focusing on it. Like, putting it in the forefront of my brain. I'm normally focused on other things, whether it's Into 3 Fitness work, my three children, like whatever it is. So it's always a secondary thing when I do a race, like a Spartan or whatever. It's like, oh, hurry up and get there. And then like, oh shit, let's go. Okay, we're running now. Like, and it's just all of us. That's how it's always been. I try to do a little bit of prep, but it's always been the back burner prep.
Yeah.
Nothing serious. And I just want to really try and increase my performance and put my money where my mouth is on this fuels course stuff that we've been talking about and everything. So that's the reason I'm putting a lot more time and effort and energy to prep this time, and we'll see how the actual event goes.
You going up there solo?
I am, so they're completely sold out of hotels. It's about an hour and a half away from me. So, and the race starts at 7 a.m. So I have to wake up from my house.
I saw that coming.
And drive. Well, I almost didn't want to stay up there anyway, because I was like, well, no chili pad. So,
because you can't just remove that.
I want to have the best night of sleep possible, so I'll probably just go to bed at 8 that night, which I'm not going to lie, that's not hard for me to do. I'll go to bed at 8, just might take a little bit longer to fall asleep, and then probably wake up at 4 and just leave, like out the door immediately, have everything prepped and loaded the night before, get there around 6-ish, and all the pre-race stuff that can happen, bowel movements and all these different things that come at the worst times every time you want to do something like this, get those taken care of, and then hit the road for 100 miles. It's such a mind game. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, these updates are getting longer, but I'm trying to make them useful for people too. So the study this week we have really is covering being a weekend warrior. Let me make sure I have it pulled up. I think I accidentally closed it. There it is. And we're just talking about how to combine your training and what matters, what doesn't matter. So the actual before we get into that, the actual name of the study is Effects of Consecutive versus Non-Consecutive Days of Resistance Training on Strength, Body Composition, and Red Blood Cells. And just as a reminder for everybody, the links to all of the reference studies and even studies that we maybe talked about but didn't, is not the one that we're specifically covering, are in the show notes. So you can go to into3fitness.com, go to the blog, and you can see the show notes. You can read more about these studies, see other studies that are referenced, things like that. So make use of the show notes. We've gotten some good feedback on those, and you can dive into this stuff further if there's like one that you happen to land on that you like. And a big reason I wanted to do this study today is because this is probably a question we get in one way, shape, or form in our training and just training in general. And it's, I'm going to be traveling these days. What if can I combine these 2 days? What do I do here back to back? Can I skip a rest day? Like all of these types of questions come up quite a bit. And I think that this study really helps shed some light on that. So let's get into it. All right. So let's see. Let's get into the study. The purpose of the study was to compare the effects of training on consecutive versus non-consecutive days. Outcomes of interest included multiple measures of strength, body composition, and red blood cell parameters. And let's see. The subjects were 28 recreationally active young men who passed a pretty extensive health screen. One thing they noted, so these weren't like excessively trained human beings, but they were... they
at least had some background.
Yeah, they were healthy with some sort of background, but they're not like a super advanced athlete or anything like that. So just so everyone is aware. All right, so the participants were randomized into 2 groups. Both groups performed the same 12-week training program, but one group trained on 3 non-consecutive days, resting 48 to 72 hours between training sessions, while the other group trained on 3 consecutive days. The training protocol involved 3 sets of 10 reps with a 10-rep max load for 5 exercises, being the leg press, pull-downs, leg curl, shoulder press, and knee extensions. The subjects were given 2 minutes of rest between sets. Now, they measured a lot of different things. They actually measured like 9 different components of their body structure, body mass, and also their strength. But what's so fascinating about this is, I feel like they let the cat out of the bag right off the bat here, but all these charts, there's basically like no difference.
Yeah, parallel lines.
They're basically no difference. They're all like the same results in each group, maybe a little bit higher in some instances and some not. And we could talk a little bit more about our interpretation of this, but and how it applies to the garage gym athlete. But what are your thoughts on it, man?
Not too much. Yeah, I think it shows that you shouldn't overthink things. Getting the work done is still going to get the work done in the end.
Exactly.
As long as you can feel, as long as you can actually do it, you're not getting too sore from it, which they address as well in it.
Yeah, and so the study is basically just saying, hey, if I have a training program and I want to do everything back to back, does it matter? So we'll do things like we'll train legs 2 days in a row. That confuses some people. Or like I said, people will come to us and they will they'll be missing days or trying to do things, and we normally give them the best advice that we can. But now science is saying, hey, it's really not going to matter if you have these excessive rest periods of multiple days or a week. Like you can do everything back to back to back and still get basically all the same results. I mean, there's very little deviation. It's not like, almost I'd be like, you can say, yeah, I'd prefer you to have a little bit of rest, like 24, 48 hours between sets, but it almost, based off of this study, and that would have been my recommendation as a coach before reading this study, but now I'm like, well, I guess, in this one study, it doesn't matter that much. Just get the work done is the most important thing. Just do the work, get the work in. I don't think there's much else to cover on that. It's a pretty short study, but I wanted people to know that getting the work in is the scientific answer to your scheduling problems.
Yeah, I think the only factor I kind of said before was just subjective of if you get too sore on the first day, it might be hard to do all that stuff the next day. But they address kind of that in the study, of the advice of like do the most strenuous lifts toward the end of your consecutive days, and the least strenuous taxing on the front end of your, like if you do 3 consecutive days, just order it that way so that you're ending your 3 consecutive days with the most strenuous that you're going to be doing.
Yeah, because I haven't been in that boat in a while, but that does make a lot of sense. So if you were to do squats today and just be like ridiculously sore, just like crazy sore, and then tomorrow I'm just like, well, we're doing some lunges and then some goblet squats, or something like that. It's like, damn it, I really don't want to move those same muscles again, but I guess you can. You just have to be mindful of where you put those exercises.
Yeah, a lot of people are can be really restrictive on time, and we've had some people say, our programming is 4 days a week, but some people only have 3. And for those, I would say to focus on some of the foundations, some of the accessory work, strength, conditioning to keep your heart rate up for a while, and then sprinkle in, if as you can, like dynamic work or the gain and pain type intervals. Not every week, but like alternate each week which one you put in there. But as long as you're keeping your foundations, you'll be good to go, and you'll still be making progress.
All right, I think that's it. It's a shorter study today, but I just think it was really important to hit, because sometimes there's like, oh, we got to cover, there's a nuance here or whatever, but it's pretty straightforward, guys. Like, do the work, put it in on consecutive or non-consecutive days, and you're going to see progress, which makes, people get wrapped around the axle on this perfection mindset. And I've talked about it in probably, let's say, 10, 15, or 1,000 different podcast episodes of this perfection mindset that people only apply to fitness and nutrition. Like they don't apply it to the rest of their lives. Nowhere else in the rest of their life are they like, oh, everything has to be perfect for me to move forward. And the people are typically like, I missed this nutrition day, or I missed a training day or something. The whole thing's screwed. You know what? Screw it. I'm just not going to do it. And that happens all the time. And this study is saying, hey, it's okay to not be perfect. Just just do the work. Just get it in, and you're going to be fine. So hopefully that can start to claw back some of that mentality of this whole all or nothing, I'm going to be perfect, or, screw everything mindset that I just see so many athletes suffer from, that really holds you back.
Yep.
All right. Now we are going to get into something a little different. New, different. It's old and new, right? It's like kind of both.
Rebranding, new hotness.
Yeah, let me get some backstory here. So we're going to be talking about Into3 Fitness programming methodology today. We've actually had a lot of requests for people as this being a topic here, and how we do things, why we do things. And it's actually driven me to write some new articles and produce some more content that I'm working on really hard right now. And I think to understand what we do, there are 3 core elements. And the first one is using elements to describe elements. The first one is EO3 elements, which is relatively new. It was the recovery game. Now it's really kind of transitioned to EO3 elements, just how we think you should live your life to make sure that you're seeing results in your training. And you can get EO3 elements at into3fitness.com. It's free download that you can get and start following those. The feedback we've got on that is just so phenomenal. Like, some people think it's like, whatever. Some people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna try this, and they're immediately start seeing all these results, whether it's weight loss or performance parameters increase after they dial in these elements. So that's really how I view step 1. So we've already created those. They're in use right now. I am writing a very long and extensive article on that and linking to studies. So that should be done. The second thing is I finally decided to give our training a name instead of just, hard to kill or whatever, and more within the industry where people can start to like wrap their head around it. Because I'm really sick of any association with CrossFit. Disgusts me. Everyone knows that. Not because I hate CrossFit, just because it's so not what we do, and that is such an elementary view on programming and fitness. If you think we do CrossFit, you have very little understanding of training and programming, and that's fine. You don't need to have that programming, but to paint us with that brush is not good. And so then we just started saying strength and conditioning, right, for a long time. But technically, like, CrossFit is a strength and conditioning protocol, like it is, like, and so are a lot of these other things. So I was like, we can't go that broad either, because strength and conditioning is almost like if you cycle, 15 hours per week and you do lunges 3 times a week too in that program, that's technically strength and conditioning, right? So it's almost too broad. So I brought it down one level to concurrent training is technically what we do. So concurrent training is what we do, and it's really how to blend, effective strength training with basically aerobic endurance, but there's a lot more to it. It's really training all of the energy systems is our true view of the concurrent training model. And so I finished that article this week. You can go check that out at into3fitness.com. Go to the blog. There's a full 2,000 plus word article on concurrent training and how we do it. And so I'm not going to cover all that here, but if you guys want to read more about it, you can do that. And that method took several years to develop. Like, it seems pretty simple after you read it or whatever, but it took a long time to go from like programming this for people to seeing patterns to developing a method to implementing it. Like, that took a long time. And then likewise, this third tier now that has been in our programming a lot more in the past, and then also currently, but like not in it's been in a very loose framework, and we're calling it anatomical geometry. So that's kind of our topic today, and this is the final phase of our programming for you to fully understand it. I'm writing another article, probably end up being anywhere from 1 to 3,000 words on this. I'm a couple hundred words into it now, and I think explaining it in this format helps a little bit more, but let me kind of explain what we have. So we call it anatomical geometry because it's going to keep athletes safe, healthy, and optimal by fixing imbalances and increasing your efficiency and quality of how you move. And it's not, when I say how you move, I'm not talking about coaching instruction. That's one of the best ways to learn proper movement, right? Is watching a video on YouTube or getting a coach and having them critique your movement. So that's very important. But when I'm talking about movement, I'm talking about it through a programming lens. Like, how can we make sure that we're correcting imbalances and keeping you safe and optimal through programming? Because that's how we technically communicate with most of our athletes. And so we're going to make sure that every movement you do serves a greater purpose beyond the short-term goal, whether if you're wanting to lose weight or get faster, stronger, whatever. We still want you to move in a way that's going to help you 20, 30, 40 years down the road. So there are 3 basic tenets to this anatomical geometry. And the first one is progressions. So developing your strength and movement quality first. So progressions are very important. I mean, and a lot of this stuff, I have to like almost throw an asterisk up, is what I'm talking about today is a very advanced method, but it's not complex. It's just very nuanced. And all coaches should be doing this to some capacity, but most of them don't have some sort of method to follow. And that's what's taken a long time to put this into a method. We didn't like make this stuff up. So progressions are very important. Like, if you're doing pull-ups, a progression before that would be ring rows, something like that, to make sure that you're progressing properly. That's the first tenet. The second tenet is contractions. So ensuring all 3 types of muscle contractions appear in the programming at the proper dose. So the 3 types of muscle contractions, most everyone knows about eccentric and concentric. So if I was doing a barbell bicep curl, on the way up is a concentric contraction, on the way down is an eccentric, and you can normally handle a lot more weight eccentrically. I don't know if anyone's ever done any. Have you ever done any like pure eccentric training, Joe? Like maybe back in your bro days, if you had them.
I don't think so.
So like you could load up, like say you could bench press 250 pounds was your max, and so we would load up like 250 on the bar and have you unrack it and just lower it as slow as you can go, and then you have 2 spotters or 1 spotter if you're strong enough.
Oh yeah, negatives. Yeah,
negatives. It's basically eccentric training or negatives. Very, like, they just rip you apart. It's like, it's some good stuff. But anyway, so we're making sure that eccentric and concentric muscle contractions are in there at the proper dose. And one that's often overlooked is isometric contractions. We do a lot of these already in our programming, but it's just making sure they're in there. So this can be holding the squat in the bottom position is isometric, or doing a plank or front leaning rest, things like that. All of these are isometric contractions that are keeping your muscle engaged, for a time period, as opposed to like a movement pattern, if that makes sense. And then the last tenet is balance. So this one is very important and not in a lot of programs, unfortunately. It's something I do my best, like I said, just from a programming standpoint, when I look at a program to go through these things. But like I said, now we've kind of formatted it into a method where we can audit our own programming. And it's to ensure athletes operate in all three planes of movement. So there's a sagittal plane, frontal plane, and transverse plane, while executing the correct ratio of anterior, posterior, and unilateral strength that will lead to structural balance. That sounds really crazy. Actually, it's hard for me to believe that I even actually wrote that sentence, but that's what balance is. So there are three different planes of movement. One big problem with a lot of CrossFit programming is they're constantly in that sagittal plane. So thinking like power cleans and things like moving weight up and down, and they never get to that transverse plane. So like any sort of rotational movement. And that's normally pretty bad because like we rotate as human beings, right? Like that's something that we need to be able to do. That's often missed in programming. And then the frontal plane is more something like a pull-up or arms out by your side type movements, lateral raises or whatever. So those are the three different planes of movement. So making sure that those are in, but also at the right ratio. And I mentioned anterior and posterior and unilateral strength is just, you have to move the front, the back, and you can't just only do sagittal posterior work like the deadlift and forget about, unilateral movements of just single leg stuff, single arm stuff, and making sure that you're getting all the right movers involved. So I feel like that's just a vomit of information right off the start there. Any questions, comments, concerns from you? Am I explaining it well enough?
I think so. I mean, you're definitely well deep into the sciencey things. This is for I kind of incorporate some of this when I mentioned before my sexy Saturdays a little bit. It's just a lot of balancing is what I do. So that's when I do a lot of banded stuff. My crossover symmetry, I'll do like single leg, like lateral box step ups and lunges and things like that, to where I am working on more of balancing. I haven't done too many holds or negative. Sometimes I'll do pull up negatives and stuff like that. But I think that's when it's good for if you have a spare day or like on the weekend, if you've done your 4 days, then to think about what you might be lacking and throw in that for some of the balancing.
Yeah, and that's like you're a more experienced coach, and so that stuff needs to be done. Like I said, this isn't something that's like brand new. It's like, oh, this is going to be thrown into the programming. It's just we've made it more methodical to where we can, like I said, audit our programming to make sure the right ratios exist and the right movements are in enough frequency. So that's the main thing that we're doing. Joe has some experience, so he's been doing some of this stuff on his own. And like I said, we didn't invent any of these things. Like the EO3 elements, like getting enough sun exposure, we didn't invent that, but we put it in a format that, helps people succeed by combining them all in the right methods. And same with concurrent training. Did not invent concurrent training, but the way we do it is pretty different than most other people out there. But the methods we follow were not invented, but putting them all together, how we put them together, is what makes it our method. And then same with this anatomical geometry. I would call this being a really experienced coach or programmer, like having a lot of experience to know, hey, if I only keep doing this, I am going to build up imbalances in this human being or myself if you're only programming for yourself. And it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. This is almost one that's like, it's really hard to teach. It's really hard to teach. It's so nuanced. Like I said, it's not complex. It's just nuanced to where you really have to know a good amount of things to be able to execute it properly. But that's what we're looking to do.
It's very unsexy, but it'll help with the sexy things.
Yes, it will. And this is also a sneak peek into our next cycle. So we're about 4 weeks away at this being published from our new cycle. Mm-hmm. And so 4 weeks away, and then we're gonna be publishing a lot more information on this anatomical geometry concept and how we are going to be using it more methodically in the next cycles. And like Joe said, they're not super sexy, but the results are going to be amazing because you're going to feel really good. You'll probably build some muscle, and with the concurrent training, go read that article about concurrent training. It's pretty good. I like it, but I think everybody should go read it because you'll just understand a lot more about why we do what we do. But that's kind of our methodology. And this is, like I said, coming from just so many people asking, and we've had all this stuff. We're doing it all, but and we have our coaching course that you go through where you learn a lot of this stuff too, but putting it even more formalized and more explained than any of those resources, I think is going to really help people be able to point to, okay, here's what I do. I do Garage Gym Athlete. They do concurrent training, and this is why it works. And they also have this other concept that overlays it called, anatomical geometry that makes sure that I'm going to be healthy and optimal. If you can explain what you do better and understand it, I think that you're going to want to do it for a long period of time because we're not just some random
hey, this is hard.
Wad spitter. That's what I call most of these other people charging for program. They're wad spitters. They're just like, now that looks cool. Let's have everybody do that next week. That'll be fun. That's kind of what our Meet Yourself Saturdays are, but it's still a little bit more thought into it than that. That's other people's programming daily. It's just like, yeah, that looks hard, or I got this workout from this guy today and that workout from that guy tomorrow, and that's fine. Like, if you just want to move and sweat, I'm not hating on you. Like, I'm so glad that you're better than most Americans in actually performing physical activity. But when you're ready to start training and stop exercising, you want to be with us. And so that's my spiel there. I don't think I got anything else, man. I don't think I should dive more into the planes of movement or muscle contractions, because that already it was painful enough coming out of my mouth to realize I'm doing that, in front of all
maybe
these.
Maybe we'll put a pin in it if there's a study to go along with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of studies on concurrent training. We're going to dive into that probably in the next podcast. We're going to talk a lot more about concurrent training. That's why I didn't go into it much further today. But this geometry stuff is, I'll see what I can dig up.
I almost failed geometry.
That, you know what? Geometry was like my best subject. Actually, I like math in general, though. That's kind of my.
I'm more of an algebraic mind.
Yeah, I enjoy math. All right, let's get to the workout. We've talked about this one before.
Yes,
Sally's Revenge. Do you feel you know it well enough to brief it?
Yes, I think so.
All right, I'll let you do it. I've been talking a lot.
It is a 1 mile run buy-in, if you will, and then you will do 3 different movements to the song "Bring Sally Up." So you will come to hate that song, and the 3 movements are pull-ups, push-ups, and then squats. And so every time it says "Bring Sally Up," you go up, and every time they say "Bring Sally Down," you go down. So that means you hold for as long as you did. They say it and don't say it, whatever. And you play the entire song for each movement, and there's 3 minutes rest in between.
Yep. In between the calisthenics, the miles, there are no rest. Yeah. There's no rest after the first mile or before the last mile.
Yep. And then you cap it with a mile, another mile. So for this, you're going to need to start somewhat scaled in the beginning, because you're not going to last long if you're already going to get fatigued early, because it's like 40 some reps, but there's a lot of holds.
Yeah, and I want to double tap on that. So I'm pretty good at pull-ups, and I still can't, I can hang till the very end, and then I start failing. So if I were to do this workout again, I might not do pull-ups, because I would love to, these are isometric contractions, good example. Pulling your chin up above a bar and then holding it there until you're allowed to go back down is isometric in nature, but also very, very challenging. The pull-up, probably the hardest one to do. And so if you can't do that, even though you're good at pull-ups, drop the ego and just scale down to a heavy or a challenging ring row. And you make a ring row challenging by getting closer to the ground, right? And your body more parallel to the ground as opposed to like a 45-degree angle. So drop the ego, do ring rows. That's what I'll say. So you can continue on, but I agree.
Yeah, I do a little bit different on that, but it's still basically the same.
Your sub is different? Or
yeah, so my rack is just low enough so that I can kind of put my toes on the ground, so that as I lower myself down, my toes can kind of touch the ground, and then when I start to really struggle to pull myself up, I can kind of toe assist my pull up, and I'm holding is fine, but then it's just that initial pull up to get up there. So it's not quite a jumping pull up; it's just a little tiny assist up, but no band.
Yeah, similar to a ring row. 'Cause, I mean, ring row, your feet are on the ground, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what's assisting you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the hardest substitute that you could do. What you're saying is like,
Yeah.
that's like one step down.
The tiniest bit of a set.
Yeah, that's one step down. Then the next step down would be what I was saying about trying to get like parallel to the ground ring rows. Yeah.
Push-ups, I'd say this one I think you can try and start off at full, and then as you start to struggle, just go to your knees. You don't really need to start on your knees in the beginning, because then toward the end you might not have felt as challenged. But I think I barely got through the push-ups last time. Yeah,
and so two things on the push-ups. When he says down, it's not rest on the ground. Down.
Yeah, not chest.
I actually saw some people do that in like videos, Instagram posts that they tagged me in. It's not, oh, good, he said down, I can just relax. Why would we ever do that? So you gotta hold, and like Joe said, you go to your knees. I'm also going to recommend go up to a bench. So incline push-ups, like to a bench or something like that, because I think that might end up being just a little bit more challenging than knee push-ups. But both good subs there as well.
Yeah, so this is also actually will challenge your form as well, because if you are somebody who does push-ups with their elbows out, you're not going to be able to hold at the bottom for long at all, because your shoulders are internally rotated, and that's a very weak position. But if you actually keep your shoulders tucked in, then as you're down on the ground, you can pinch your elbows into your body, and that's kind of keeps you there.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think maybe we should hit on. My mother-in-law, she just started, she used to kind of be a runner, and then she just kind of fluctuated, but she started training at a gym recently in New York. And she's like, hey, did you know that when you do push-ups, you're not supposed to have your elbows way out? They're supposed to be like in. And I was like, you didn't know that? So I just want to make sure that people know, sometimes we get caught up in what people don't know is if your elbows are really flared out, you're putting a ton of unnecessary pressure on your rotator cuff, your joints, your deltoid, like just everything. It's uncomfortable to me. Like if I just even getting in that position, like I'm doing it as we're speaking, it's like feels a little bit uncomfortable in the back of my deltoids. So yeah, maybe like a 45-degree angle. When I do push-ups, my triceps are basically like touching my sides. I'm real close push-up person now, because I do basically rely on my triceps, because I have really strong triceps when I do push-ups. So that's just a great point from you, Joe, and something I thought just needed a little bit more explanation for people.
Yeah. Quick home assessment, flare your elbows out and try and flex your pec and feel it, and then put your elbows in and just feel how much tenser your pec is. That means you're engaging more kind of your pec. And also, if you want to actually test it out, then do like 1 inch hold from the ground at the bottom of a push-up of elbows in, and then do elbows out, or do elbows out first and then elbows in with like rest in between, and see which one's harder. Yeah, and you might not be able to do the more correct version that we're saying if you're weak in that position, but it's going to feel a lot better. Yeah. And it will eventually over time be better for you. Yeah. And then squats. So air squats, make sure you're doing good form on that. And then up is standing up, and then down, that means you're going to be holding at the bottom of a squat. This you can just do air squats, or you can throw an empty barbell on your back, or a little bit of weight, anywhere from up to 135 pounds. Which I think that was the full recommendation for competitors. Yeah, so I mean, just the things on the squat to really keep in mind. So like the push-up, when I said when you're in that down position, don't just rest on the ground. Likewise, in the bottom of the squat, for your safety, don't just like squat all the way down and get loose and like disgusting. Like get down at the bottom position, hold your hamstrings, quads tight. If you have no idea how to do that, hold your core as tight as you can, and then just try and flex your legs a little bit. That's the best coaching cue I could give you. So tighten your abs in that bottom position. Not crazy, not like you're trying to, show off at the beach during a picture, but a contraction of your abdominals, and just try and flex your quads a little bit. And how you would flex your quads, that's basically how you're going to start coming up. You would feel that. And so just holding a little bit of tension there, it's going to be way better for your spine and your joints and everything, as opposed to just like getting in that bottom position and like
rounding your back and letting your abdomen do whatever it does and not keeping the spine aligned, like hold a tight position in the bottom of the squat, especially if you have weight.
Yep. And then run.
And then run. And for the runs, really important here, go as fast as you can. There's always that, right?
Yeah, that's always your answer. How fast should I do this? As fast as you can.
Well, if it's a run, there's no other answer. If it's a 1 mile run, it almost never needs to be paced. I think you should figure out a little bit about who you are and what you think about life by running a mile as fast as you can.
Except for the first Murph mile. That's like 90%.
I have to kind of agree with you. But I actually have different recommendations. If you're trying to go fast on Murph, you're right, which is what we're trying to be a little bit more optimal. If you only want to meet yourself in Murph, go as fast as you can.
Just blow it out of the water.
Because do the 5, for me, it's like a low 5-minute mile, and then try and do Murph after, and then run again. It's one of the worst experiences ever. So leaving that little bit in the tank does make my time better, but I meet myself a little bit less. So you have to decide which one you want to do there. All right. So why join Garage Gym Athlete?
Because you want to play the long game, and we're playing the long game.
Yeah, you want to be a part of something that's planned, programmed, and not a wad spitter outer.
Yeah, I think I thought of a quote that hopefully it works, and that's everyone else is playing putt-putt, and we're playing the full 18.
Did you just make that quote up, or
I did?
Well, I like it.
I made it up like an hour ago when you posted something, but
this is how shirts get created.
Yeah, right.
You know what shirt I want to make, and someone was going to beat me to it, but I'm going to go ahead and give the full idea.
It's like the third shirt that you've pitched on the podcast, and we haven't gotten one yet.
Well, there's Hard to Kill for Life.
Joe Rogan.
Oh, I'm not actually going to make the Joe Rogan thing because I don't want to piss Joe Rogan off. He's a cool guy.
Just silently make it and send him out like, oh man, who made this?
Yeah. When someone argues with me on social media via direct message, I'll just say, hey, give me your address. I'm going to send you a present. Okay. The shirt I've been thinking about for a long time. It takes a little bit of a backstory and explanation, but you could do this on the page, information page for the shirt. Is I want it to be a guy breathing, what looks like fire. It'd be more of like a comic type version or whatever. And it says fat breather. Now, here's why. That is where fat goes. Like a lot of people don't know that. It's like when you lose fat, where does it go? Like if I'm going to lose 10 pounds of fat over the next year, where do those 10 pounds of fat go? Do I just pee them out? Do I poop them out? The answer is maybe a little. Like your body will get rid of waste through sweat, urine, and poop, but it's actually very small percentage. The majority of where fat goes is out your breath. You breathe fat out. That is where it goes when it gets broken down by the body. It gets used for energy. It breaks up those carbon chains. Those carbon chains come out, carbon dioxide. You are breathing out fat. I'm breathing out fat right now. So are you. So, see, it takes a lot of explanation for it to make sense, and I don't know who would actually want to wear it, but I want to make it.
Fat breathers. Sounds like a club. Just like an awkward club.
All right, I think we got to end it there. If you guys want to see the Fat Breather shirt and you're one of our athletes, let me know. Either message me or throw it in the group, and we'll get it done. If I don't hear anybody from anywhere, I will not make that shirt, but it will always be an idea that I loved. All right. That's it. Peace out. Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.